Before I begin this tale, I should warn you that the following story contains some material that may be sensitive to some viewers. There is some racial prejudice here that I regret having happened, but did. It is a part of the stories and the histories here at the Fireside Tales. Believe me, I would like to go back and change these events so that they didn't happen. Much like I would like to change a lot of events that happened here. I'd reach my hands back in time and make it so that Cora was never murdered by Anselm, or that the man in black and the man in gray never got into their battle with each other. But there is also a lot of things that I would never change here, like the tortoise and the hare, or the story of Frank Bottom. Those are events that I'm quite glad to be a part of the Fireside Tales. So I suppose in the end I'm just an historian who must tell the story as it occurs, whether I like it or not. This particular story tonight is of The Fisherman and the Genie, or a sequel to it. I know you all weren't expecting a sequel to The Fisherman and the Genie, but there actually is one. And it begins with a fisherman going off one day to spend some time alone. He walked around and he found a lake that he had never known to have been there before. And as he sat down, he began to fish. And as he fished, he began to catch fish that were way more beautiful than any he had seen before. He caught at first a red fish, then a white fish, then a blue fish, then a yellow fish. That scales sparkled like the sun. And he decided he would go back to the kingdom and give these fish to the king, who had become quite good friends with. Anyways, he went back, and when the king saw these fish, he decided that they should be prepared as a most wonderful meal for the whole kingdom. And as the cook went back and she began to put the fish into the frying pan, the cook was astounded when a woman appeared from the wall, and the woman had light shining beside her, and her voice was angelic, and the woman said that they should be punished, and the fish turned to ash. Well, when the cook told this story to the king decided that he would investigate this matter further. He got some fishermen to go back and bring some more fish down for the cook to prepare, and the cook did so, and the same thing happened. A beautiful woman came out of the wall and said that they would be punished, and the fish turned to ash. Well, the king decided that there must be a story behind this lake, so he went back to it, and he realized that there must be something there indeed, for the lake was on no map that they had, and none of the other townspeople, none of the other people in the kingdom had ever heard of it. So he went down to it, and he began to walk around and investigate, and he finally came across a cave that was just covered in vines. So he pushed through them, and when he entered, he found a man seated on the far corner of the cave. But this man was different from any other man that the king had ever seen before. Half of his body was of stone, from his legs to half of his stomach, and the other half was flesh from the other half of the stomach to the head. And as he stood there, the king expected him not to even be alive, that he must be some kind of statue or something. But then the man spoke, and the man spoke very much in laments. "I am the Ensorcelled prince," he explained. "I have been seated here for 50 long years, hoping that someone would come across me, other than that slave who's out there doing God knows what." And the king asked him to tell him his story, for it did seem that there was quite a story here. So the Ensorcelled prince began. "I was quite a prince back in those days. I had married the most beautiful woman in all of the country, and the two of us would walk together in the gardens and talk of all the things that existed in the heavens and the earth. But there was this odd habit that my wife had. Each night she would give me a glass of wine, and I would fall asleep into a deep slumber. And then I would awake, and then everything would return to normal. Well, people in my city began to make rumors that my wife was cheating on me. So I decided to investigate the matter. I pretended one night to drink the wine, but didn't really, and pretended to fall asleep. And I followed my wife to a cave. There I found her sleeping with a black slave, and the two of them, I would eavesdrop and hear, were planning wickedness against me. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. hands. I took an axe, and I went back to the cave, and I killed the, slave, or at least I believe that I did. I, hit him in the neck, and I went back home. And after that, my wife became quite sad. She said that she was going into mourning, and she began to take many supplies from my kingdom, and back to the cave. Well, I decided to let her drain her sorrows away. But, many months passed, and she still had not given this up. So I became quite angry and told her she must not do this again. But she wouldn't listen to me. And finally one night I resolved that I would go, and I would speak to her. So I went to the cave, only to find that the black slave was still there. He was very wounded, but very much alive. And when I saw this, I yelled that she must give this up, that she must come back to the kingdom and let this man lie here and die. And she became quite angry at me, and she cast a curse on me, where half of my body turned to stone. And she also cast a curse on my kingdom, making all of the people turn to fish. The blue fish are the Christians, the white fish are the Muslims, the yellow fish are the Jews, and the reds are the Magians. I have been like this for 50 long years, my friend. And the king said that he would be able to help him, and he knew exactly how. He went out into the woods with his knife, and the king tracked down the slave, and when he found him, he snuck up behind him and stabbed him in the back. He took off all the slave's clothes and threw the slave down into a well. Then he went back to the cave and sat. And, soon enough, the sorcerer returned. And when she found the slave there, she was very surprised when he began to speak. And he asked her to return the king to normal, as he was getting quite tired of him lamenting to God all the time, and it was making it so that he couldn't fall to sleep. So the sorcerer did as she was bid. Then the slave, or actually the king, asked her to return the kingdom back to normal, and she did as she was told. And when she was finished, the king jumped up, pulled out his knife, and killed the sorcerer. And so her evil and all of her spells were destroyed once and for all. Well, the king and the prince became quite good friends. The king had quite a long travel back home, because the city had returned to its normal place. But when he got back, he had made a connection with this prince that would last for many a long year, actually into the very present day. And the fisherman was once again rewarded, given quite a lot of jewels, and his sons were awarded with the king's daughters. And so it is that we have again a happily ever after. And I suppose that is the best way to end off all fairy tales, right? Happily ever after, and good night.